I might grab a bat, I don't know, my wrath, my blood boils over like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show. So have you ever felt betrayed? Switches how you see things, realize something needs change. Cause I know you got me up, let me show you what's up. Cause enough is enough.
All right, welcome to one of the Fantasy Six-Pack 2022 Fantasy Football Team previews. We're going to be covering the New York Giants. With me doing that is Mr. Dave Eddy, and let's jump right into things with our quarterback room with Daniel Jones over here at overall 160, QB 23, and oh boy, where to start with this guy, man? You know, after his rookie year, things were looking up for him. You know, and his sophomore year wasn't terrible, wasn't awesome either, but still, like, well, actually, no, sorry, his sophomore year was terrible. So his rookie year, right, 24 touchdowns in 13 games, ran for 279 yards, ran for another 2. Like, things were looking promising, right? Then the sophomore year happened, and it was just like, okay, 11 touchdowns in 14 games. It somehow got worse. In 2021, only 10 touchdowns. And granted, only 11 games, so maybe on a per-game average, we're thinking, all right, fine. But something's got to give with this guy. And I know the receivers weren't really healthy last year, but, dude, you are a pro quarterback. You've got to throw more than 10 touchdowns on a season, even in just 11 games, right?
Listen, I'll say two things about Daniel Jones, right? The first one, Daniel Jones makes me wish that I had 3 hands because I want to give him 3 thumbs down. I don't think 2 is enough. Possibly a hot take here, but I honestly think that when the season's all said and done, I think we're going to see more Tyrod Taylor than we see Daniel Jones.
You know, I don't totally disagree. Tyrod's been a serviceable quarterback, right? I mean, he's Mr. like backup forever, it feels like. And every team he gets on somehow finds a way to like start him for a game and a half, and then they're like, "Oh, never mind. We want to start you instead." And they just do it. He was Herbert, and then last year with Mills, and so it's just kind of like, they always find a way to not use him, but I mean, yeah, arguably, man, he's been a better quarterback than Daniel Jones. So, I want literally nothing to do with Daniel Jones, and that QB 23 ranking is.
Nope.
I mean, the guys behind him aren't good either, but man, I don't want anything to do with it. Even in 2 QB leagues, it's really hard to feel good about drafting Daniel Jones, but we have probably spent way too much time talking about him. Let's get to something a little more interesting with the running backs. Mr. Saquon Barkley. Penn State was amazing, right? And then just injuries and everything else happened with him. Matt Breida has been good, right? But injuries for him too. What do we do with Barkley? Like, are we going like, oh man, now he's a value, middle of the 3rd round, RB16, and so I'm back in again because it's a value, or just Barkley just isn't the same. We saw Wayne Gallman look better than him last year, I believe, is who that name was, right? Yep, I mean, there were times where I was watching games on Red Zone last year and being like, oh, there's Barkley. Oh, no, wait, that was Wayne Gallman. Damn. All right. Then Barkley would come in and look like he's just being, he's got a sled tied to his back, man, like with 300 pounds. He just looked slow. I mean, maybe a year removed from the ACL injury is going to be good for him, but I find it hard to want to draft him even at RB16. What about you?
Yeah, I think that Saquon Barkley comes down to pretty much what your risk tolerance is. If you're okay with drafting someone that could be a top 5 running back or could, be outside the top 30, then Saquon is your guy. If you like to play things a little safer, then you'll probably already have 2 running backs by the time you would consider taking Saquon. So when he's kind of around,
maybe, I mean, at RB16, maybe not. But yeah,
I mean,
it's tough.
I'm not going to say Saquon is off my board, but I would say that I'm probably more towards the low man in the room on him. So I don't know exactly where he'd have to fall for me to be like, okay, yep, I'm going to snag him here.
Yeah.
It's going to be somewhere in probably it's going to be somewhere in like, maybe the end of the third round if that's where I'm picking. And even then, I might not.
So I'll tell you, this is his ranking, remember. This is the Fantasy Pros ranking that I pull. His ADP on Sleeper right now is 12 for running backs.
No.
You got guys like Aaron Jones. We've even got Zeke sitting behind him, who I don't really like, but I probably like better than Zeke or than Barkley. You got Fournette behind him. You've got,
I would take Barkley
Gibson and
over
Akers.
Just because
David Montgomery, I might take over him. I just am out on Barkley.
I feel like volume is king at running back, and if you draft Barkley, you're drafting him because obviously you're hoping that he stays healthy. And so long as he's healthy, there's nobody on this team that's going to take carries from him. It's just a matter of.
I think you're shorting Breida a little bit. Breida's good back, dude. Granted, he came out of that 40. Oh, of course not. But is Barkley healthy and the same guy? I'm not sure he is anymore. I kind of think
line should be better as well. That's got a lot to do with it as well. It really doesn't help that he almost doesn't have an NFL quarterback, under
no, not at all. That's what
off of him. So I don't know, man.
It's not helping things.
He's the ultimate risk tolerance guy. You're either taking him because you're like, F it, or you're just avoiding him because you just don't want the headache.
Yeah, I feel you. So let's move over here to the receivers, which, dude, the room looks good. They just got to stay on the field, right? And so this is why we see their values so low, right? So Kenny Golladay, 145, wide receiver 52. Toney's actually ahead of him here at 127 and 48. Sterling Shepard is 194 and 69. We got rookie Wan'Dale Robinson at 256 and 90. Darius Slayton still hanging around 316, 104. Like, all of these guys can perform at a high level. They just got to stay healthy. And in Galladay's problem might be, does he actually still want to play football? Because, man, when he was on the field last year, sure as hell didn't look like it. That might have been a Daniel Jones problem. But so what, like, if there's one guy from this team that you had to draft, one guy from this wide receiver room, who is it?
I should have known that was a question you were going to ask me, and that's hard, man. I would say Kadarius Toney, just simply because I think that it's easiest to get him the ball. So especially in like a full PPR league, he's the kind of guy who can get me a lot of catches, not so much yardage and maybe not so much touchdowns, but he can, get a lot of goofy plays and get a lot of balls behind the line of scrimmage, and he can rack up safe points. I feel like the rest of these guys have to make bigger plays than what Kadarius Toney does, if that makes sense. So I just feel like he's got the opportunity for the most volume just based on the type of player he is and how they tried most of the time to use him last year when he was on the field.
Yeah, when Toney was healthy and like being integrated into this offense fully, right? He saw 13 targets in week 5. Mm-hmm. Then, guys were in and out. He was on and off the field, but in week 11 saw 12 and then was injured for 4 straight weeks. Then came back in week 16 and saw 9. So the targets were there even with the other guys healthy. I will say this, Golladay might be a guy who I take another chance on at that price range. He started seeing, 8 targets near the end, and then just like, I don't know, like the whole week 17, who knows what happened there. He only saw 1 target. Nobody else was even healthy, so I have no idea what happened that game. Did the Giants show up that day? But, I don't know why. I can't quit Kenny Golladay. And when his stock is falling that far, we're talking, 12th, 13th round at that point for Kenny Golladay. I could buy that.
It really is going to depend if he gets in the end zone, because when he was in Detroit, part of what made him, a well thought of receiver is, 2019 he had 11 touchdowns. Well, I'll take 11 touchdowns all day long. 1,200 yards is nice as well, but 11 touchdowns.
116 targets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's not getting 11 touchdowns because Daniel Jones can't even throw them.
that's very
But
true.
if you told me
That's
that,
very
hey,
true.
Kenny Golladay is going to get 5 touchdowns, I think you'd be happy with that. I just don't know if that's going to happen.
That's true. I mean, look, when it all comes down to it, I'm not sure I'm really, excited to take any of these guys, but, force my hand. I think Golladay is kind of the one I want. I mean, honestly, it might be really, if I really had to, probably Shepard because he's the cheapest and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Shepard's always just a guy. Like, he's just a half PPR, like, bye-week fill-in, and sure, throw him in. But let's finish things off here with this team, and it's a new-look tight end room here. Ricky Seals-Jones comes in for Evan Ingram. I mean, not even being drafted. Just any final thoughts on Ricky Seals-Jones?
I mean, if that wide receiver room cannot stay healthy, I think we saw last year that when given volume, RSJ can be a viable player. But now he's got Daniel Jones throwing the ball, and obviously there's a ton of competition out there for catches. So it's going to take some magic for him to be viable. And, I mean, you're obviously not drafting him unless we start to see some of these injuries in the offseason, which seems awfully unlikely. So he's almost certainly just waiver wire fodder, and he'll be there if you need him.
He's a wait-and-see guy. Don't even worry about him in your draft. But all right, that's it for the New York Giants. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching. Hit that subscribe button, that like button. Leave those comments. We appreciate it and look forward to it. And make sure you check out the rest of our team previews here on the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. See ya.